His hands would not stop shaking. He pressed his palms flat on the desk, but they still trembled. The room felt too small, too hot, the air thick like wet cloth. He could hear a low hum from the machines, a steady beep, a voice crackling on a headset. But one sound rose above everything else. A siren. A sharp, cruel siren that cut through his chest. He shut his eyes for half a second. He hoped it was a mistake. He hoped the alarm would stop. It did not stop. The screen in front of him glowed red. A single word flashed again and again. He could taste metal in his mouth. He could feel sweat crawl down his neck. His heartbeat was loud. Too loud. Another officer yelled behind him. 5 missiles. 5, they're already in the air. The room exploded with voices. Chairs scraped across the floor. Men shouted over each other. Someone dropped a clipboard. But the man at the desk did not move. He stared at the red light. He stared at the word that could end the world. 5 missiles. Headed straight toward his country. If he reported it, the military would fire back. They would send their own missiles. Thousands of them. Across oceans. Across continents. Cities would burn. Millions would die. If he stayed silent and the missiles were real, then his own people would die. His family. His friends. Everyone. His stomach twisted. He whispered to himself, "This cannot be real. It cannot." But the alarm kept screaming. The red light kept flashing, and the whole world hung on the choice of one man in one bunker, buried under a quiet field far from the eyes of the world. He knew what the rules said. The rules said he must report. No questions. No doubts. No thinking. But he did think. He thought of how the screen had glitched last week. He thought of how the satellite was new and still had bugs. He thought of how real missiles would come in hundreds, not 5. His breath shook. He had only seconds. Seconds to choose if the world would live, or if it would end in fire. This man in this choking, crowded room. This man with shaking hands. His name was Stanislav Petrov. And in this moment, he was the thin line between peace and the end of everything. Let's step back. Before the sirens, before the red lights, before Stanislav Petrov sat in that bunker with the world on his shoulders. The world at that time was like a house made of dry sticks. One spark could burn it all down. 2 giant countries stood on each side, staring at each other with fear and anger. The United States on one side, the Soviet Union on the other. Both sides built weapons, bigger, stronger, faster. Missiles that could fly across the planet. Missiles that could end life in an hour. Each side said the same thing. We need these weapons so the other side will be scared to attack us. It was like 2 nervous kids in a playground, each holding a lit match, telling themselves, I won't drop mine, unless he drops his. The leaders were not monsters. They were scared too. They feared being tricked. They feared being caught off guard. They feared being blamed for not protecting their people. Fear is a loud voice. It shouts. It pushes people to act before thinking. And fear ruled this time. Both sides built giant radar stations. Both sides sent satellites into space. Both sides created machines that watched the sky every second of every day. They wanted to see an attack the moment it began. They wanted no surprises. But there was a problem. These machines were new. They were not perfect. They made mistakes. They saw things that were not real. They cried wolf when the sky was empty. Still, the rules were simple. If the machine said missiles were coming, you had to act fast. There was no time to check. No time to wait. Every second mattered. And that is where Stanislav Petrov entered the story. He did not plan to be the man who stopped a war. He was a quiet man, a thinker, the kind of person who liked puzzles, patterns, and understanding how things worked. He grew up in a small village. He lost his father when he was a child. His mother worked hard. He studied hard too. He joined the Air Defense Forces. Not because he wanted power, but because he was good at solving problems. His job, years later, was simple on paper. Watch the screens. Trust the machines. Report the moment they showed an attack. But he also knew something others sometimes forgot. Machines break. Machines lie. Machines do not understand fear. Machines do not understand war. He understood those things. By the early 1980s, the tension between the 2 countries was the tightest it had been in years. Leaders gave angry speeches. Bombers flew close to borders. Spy planes circled high in the sky. Everyone expected the other side to make a wrong move. Some thought war would come any day. Inside the Soviet Union, the leaders were nervous. Some were old and sick. Some felt surrounded. Some felt the world was slipping away from them. They believed America might strike first to gain the upper hand. So they built a new warning system. A satellite that would watch for heat from missile engines. If it saw that heat, it would scream. Stanislav knew the system was new. Too new. Still being tested, still having problems. But rules were rules. And on that night, September 26, 1983, Stanislav was the duty officer. The one man who had to make the call. The one man who had to trust his training, or trust his gut. He did not know that history had been creeping toward him. Step by step, fear by fear, speech by speech, mistake by mistake. He did not know the world had placed him in a chair where one wrong word could end millions of lives. He only knew this. He was in a bunker. He was on duty, and the machines were watching the sky. He had no idea the machines were about to scream. The siren kept screaming, but Stanislav did not move. Not yet. Not until he understood. He stared at the red word on the screen. 1 missile. Then 5. The machine said it was real, but something inside him whispered, "Wait." He took a slow breath. He checked the numbers again. He checked the satellite feed. He checked the heat readings. They all said the same thing. Missiles were coming. A young officer rushed to his side. His face was pale, his eyes wide. He looked like he might be sick. "What do we do?" the officer asked. Stanislav did not answer. Not yet. He needed calm. He needed silence. But there was no silence. Only fear. Fear bouncing off the walls like a trapped bird. Another officer shouted, "We need to report. We must report." But Stanislav lifted his hand. A small gesture? Quiet. But the room froze. He had that kind of presence. He was not loud. He was not angry. He was steady. And in that moment, everyone needed steady. He spoke without raising his voice. "How many missiles?" 5, the officer said. "Only 5? Stanislav asked. "Yes, 5. That bothered him. 5 missiles made no sense. If you want to start a war, you do not send 5. You send everything. You send hundreds. 5 was strange. Too small. Too neat. His mind raced. His hands shook. But his thoughts were sharp. He said softly, "This might be false." The officer stared at him. "Sir, the system is certain. Machines can be wrong," Stanislav said. That was not what anyone was supposed to say. Ever. Not in that room. Not with those rules. Another officer stepped forward. His voice cracked. "Sir, if you do not report and it is real—" "Yes," Stanislav said. "I know." And that was the weight. The crushing, bone-breaking weight. If he was wrong, millions would die. If he was right, he would save them. But no one would thank him. No one would even know. He looked at the clock. Seconds were slipping away. He remembered something. A detail. A small thing from training. The satellite could be tricked by sunlight. If the sun hit the clouds just right, if the angle was perfect, it might look like a missile flame. He thought of that. He held onto it like a rope in a storm. The officer beside him whispered, "Sir, we must choose." But then, everything changed. A second alarm went off. Another screen turned red. The system now said the missiles were closer. Their path was locked in. The room erupted again. Voices crashed against each other. Panic spread like fire. But Stanislav did not budge. He stood. He wiped the sweat from his face. He said, "We wait." The room went silent. No one dared breathe. They all thought he was insane. They all thought he was risking everything. A man at the back of the room shouted, "You will be blamed if we are hit. They will call you a traitor." Stanislav did not look at him. Under his breath, he said, "Better a traitor than wrong." His heart hammered. His throat felt tight. His eyes burned from staring at the lights. But he made his call. He picked up the phone. The phone that would send the message to the highest command. The phone that would decide whether missiles flew back across the ocean. He held it in his hand. The handset felt heavy, like stone. He dialed. His voice was steady when he spoke. "False alarm," he said. "Do not launch." "I repeat, do not launch." The officers stared at him in disbelief. One whispered, "God help us." Another said, "If you are wrong, sir." "I know," Stanislav said. He sat down. He wiped his face again, and he waited. The longest wait of his life. Seconds dragged like hours. Every tick of the clock punched his nerves. Every breath felt sharp. He imagined explosions. He imagined fire. He imagined the shockwave hitting the ground above them. He thought of his wife. He thought of his children. He thought of the sky turning white. But the sky stayed quiet. No impact. No shaking. No fire. Minutes passed. Nobody spoke. Finally, a voice came through on a radio. Calm, almost bored. No missiles detected. All clear. The room collapsed in relief. Some officers sat on the floor. Some covered their faces. One began to cry. Stanislav let out a long, shaky breath. He felt like someone had pulled a knife out of his chest. But then nobody saw what was coming next. The commander arrived, a hard man, cold eyes, a stiff walk. He looked around the room, at the officers, at the screens, at the sweat and fear still hanging in the air. "What happened?" he asked. An officer pointed at Stanislav. "He made the call, sir." The commander turned to him. "You overruled the system?" "Yes," Stanislav said. "You ignored a direct protocol?" "Yes." The commander stepped closer. "So tell me, Major Petrov, why?" Stanislav looked him in the eyes, his voice calm. "I believed it was wrong." The commander stared at him, a long, cold stare. Then he said, "Do you know what would have happened if you were wrong?" "Yes," Stanislav said. "I do." The commander leaned in. "Do you know what will happen to you now?" Stanislav held his breath. The commander paused. "You will be investigated." And just like that, the world's quiet savior became the main suspect. But the worst part? Stanislav had no idea the system was about to fail again. And this time, the twist would cut even deeper. The investigation began fast. Men in dark uniforms, cold questions, cold faces. They asked him the same things again and again. "Why did you ignore the warning? Why did you break protocol? Why did you think you were smarter than the system?" Stanislav kept calm. He told them the truth. The system felt wrong. The numbers did not fit. The attack made no sense. But they did not like that answer. They wanted him scared. They wanted him small. Days passed. He barely slept, barely ate. The pressure crushed him. But then, everything changed again. A message arrived. A report from the satellite team. A secret note. It said the warning system had failed. The sunlight had bounced off the clouds. It tricked the sensors. It created false heat. It fooled the machines. Stanislav had been right. But instead of praise, instead of thanks, silence. Deep, sharp silence. The truth was simple. They could not celebrate him. If they admitted he saved the world, they also had to admit the system was broken. And they were the ones who built it. So they buried it. They locked the truth in dark rooms. They warned him to stay quiet. No awards. No medals. Nothing. But the pressure did not stop. It got worse. He returned to work. But the officers avoided him. Some whispered behind his back, "Traitor. Rule breaker." Lucky guess. But he was not a traitor. He was tired. So tired, his wife saw the change first. He spoke less. He smiled less. He walked like the air around him was heavy. Then came the final blow. One night, months later, he woke up sweating, heart racing, the same siren ringing in his head, the same red light. He could not escape it. It lived inside him now. And the stress cracked him. He fell ill. He collapsed at home. Doctors rushed in. They said his nerves were torn apart. His body was giving up. Stress had eaten him from the inside. Even then, he got no praise. No support. No kindness. He sat at home silent, holding a truth no one wanted to hear. He had saved the world. But the world did not want to know. Years passed. The Soviet Union fell. Old secrets slipped out. Old files opened, and whispers spread. A man in a bunker, a false alarm, a choice in seconds. A world saved by calm hands and a sharp mind. Journalists came. Scientists came. Historians came. But Stanislav did not brag. Not once. He spoke in a soft voice. He said he was just doing his job. He said he was not a hero, but he was. He was the man who stood in the fire and refused to let the flames spread. He was the man who stopped a war without firing a single bullet. He was the man who chose sanity in a world built on fear. Stanislav's story did not end with cheers. It did not end with trophies. It ended quietly, just like the night he saved us. No crowds, no parade, no leaders shaking his hand. He lived a simple life, in a small apartment, with simple meals, and long walks to clear his mind. But people began to find him, slowly at first. A reporter, a student, a man writing a book. They came with one question: did you really save the world? He always gave the same answer: nobody saves the world alone. But he did. More than he would ever admit. In his last years, he looked tired, like a man who had carried a secret weight for too long. But sometimes when he talked about that night, his eyes softened, just a little, like he remembered the moment he chose calm over panic, reason over fear, life over death. The lesson is simple. Machines can watch the sky, Machines can track heat, machines can scream alarms, but only people can choose. Only people can think. Only people can say, wait. The world did not end that night because one man paid attention. Because one man refused to panic. Because one man believed in human judgment more than blinking lights and loud sirens. We are here because of him. We breathe because of him. We wake each morning under a sky that could have burned but did not. All because of a quiet man with shaking hands who held the world steady when everyone else lost their nerve. And when you think of him, remember this one truth. Sometimes the greatest hero is the one who never lets the world know how close it came to falling apart.